Hi, my name is Chris Winterson, and Tracy's asked me to come in and talk about my experience with e-portfolios. It's 6 months ago now that I walked into History 200 for the very first time, and what so many students have claimed to be the bird course of the history curriculum actually turned out to be the most important class I've ever taken in my life. It wasn't for the subject matter itself, but for the inspiration that I found from Professor Pennylight's progressive teaching methods and lecture style. Tracy was the first teacher who ever took me the time to show me how to connect the lessons I learned in the classroom with my own experiences in everyday life. And by taking the time to step back and look at the big picture of my lifetime, I've been able to see how all of my experiences in and out of the classroom have come together to create a whole that far surpasses the sum of its parts. Tracy's holistic approach to teaching opened my eyes to the value and potential of my academic career and gave me the motivation to incorporate my personal interest in the essays and projects of History 200. Like a lot of students, I could not wrap my head around what Tracy was telling us when she described the e-portfolio to us for the very first time. We were being introduced to something that looked like an overblown version of MySpace.com, and we were supposed to somehow bring it all together to showcase all that we had learned throughout the term. I was so accustomed to having strict guidelines for every step of my projects that the prospect of having absolute control over how I wanted to present my knowledge was alien to me. What made me prick up my ears from the get-go was the fact that our e-portfolios would be presented in place of a final exam, and that little imaginary part of me that had struggled through countless multiple-choice exams and 3-hour essays actually got up and did a little jig in my head. And, I eventually concluded that anything that could inspire such enjoyable jigginess could not be all bad and was at least worth the effort. Over the next 4 months, I began to realize what Tracy meant when she spoke of making connections, and I started to figure out what the e-portfolio was all about. This project is designed to nurture reflective thinking in the learner, provide a guideline that prompts them to make connections between classroom lessons, workplace experience, and their own life experiences. Because it demanded a much broader perspective of the lessons, I was able to pull myself out of the immediate rush of midterms, assignments, projects, and readings, and focus all of my attention on how it all actually came together in the grand scheme of things. My time spent reading books for pleasure, going to concerts, writing, drawing, watching movies, and playing sports instilled values in me that shaped how and what I learn. And as a student of the liberal arts program, I have access to every class in the school. And because of this, Tracy challenged me to think of how my personal interests and life experiences connect with my years spent here studying history, English, sociology, psychology, and sexual studies at the university. And by doing this, I began to see how my personal life and educational career were intertwined. And instead of simply memorizing facts and dates like I had been for so many years before, I finally began to internalize and contextualize the lessons, making them important to me by connecting them to what interests me. By the end of the term, I had taken more from the so-called bird course than any other class in my time spent here at UW. I had a new perspective on learning, a new appreciation for how my academic and personal lives were connected, and a new tool to organize my thoughts with. I realize now that my personal interests have value in my education, and my education has value in the way I live my life outside of the classroom. It would seem that my time spent thinking about the e-portfolio and working on making the connections paid off too, since the end result of History 200 was an essay that I see as the holy grail of my UW career. It's a 10-page historical analysis of how zombie and alien invasion films of the 1950s reflected Cold War tensions. Kind of a hybrid historical contextualization and a mix of my Evil Dead adoration. The attention from that essay opened doors that I'd always hoped to walk through one day in my life, with an offer of publication in historical journals and a summer job as a research assistant here at the university. Thanks to Tracy's encouragement to broaden the scope of my studies and the objective perspective that the e-portfolio encouraged, I had the basic know-how to make one hell of an essay that brought together my research skills, analytical skills, and adoration for all things cheesy.